Kia ora koutou katoa, nau mai ara mai ki te ao Hākinakina, your sports show, right here on your Tribal Pulse, Te Kore Mako o Taranaki, 94.8 FM and 98.4 FM. Now, he is a part of New Zealand softball folklore, hailing from the mighty Waitara. He has represented his nation numerous times, both as a player and as a coach. He is a part of the softball fabric here in Aotearoa, and the game runs deep in his veins. He is the current high-performance manager for sport softball New Zealand, and an all-round good bloke. Bevan Mātene, nau mai hara mai.
Tēnā koe te rangatira.
Good to have you on the show, cuz. Awesome to have you on the show. Looking forward to this kōrero. But before we get started, ko wai koe no he koe, a bit about yourself and where you're from.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, te Taranaki manga. Ko te manga tito he tēnei, ko Waitara, ure nui, nā awa, ko toko maru, nā waka, ko tamarau te atua o te iwi, o te Atiawa, ko Ngāti Mutunga, Ngāti Tama, ko Taranaki nā iwi, ko Bevan Mātene ahau, tōku pāpā, ko Paul Martin, a.k.a. Shady, a.k.a. Gunzy, tōku māma Prue Martin. Ko taku whai a ipo, ko Abby Bailey Nau, ko taku taonga, ko mātatua Mātene. Tēnā koe.
Awesome, man. Yeah, like I said, good to have you on the show and to make those connects. I remember your old man back in the rugby days quite well. So, hey, for you, just to get started, where did it all begin for you, Bev? Like, were you born into softball?
For those of you that know Dad, obviously played Taranaki rugby and golf and cricket, represented them. But so Dad was cricket, never played softball. So I used to go along and play cricket in my junior years, and it wasn't until we lived next door to Māori and Jimatoa. For those people in Waitara, you obviously know they're very strong in softball in Te Atiawa. So I learned to play softball in the horse paddock next to their whare, with Gary and Kieran, Nick, David, with the boys. So we used to play it in the background and play it there. So that's how I was brought into softball. So it wasn't through my mum or dad. Dad had no idea what softball was about. It was always cricket for him. But his brothers played Murray and Tony. So came through that. I used to play cricket and softball on the same day, and then go to that. And it wasn't until I didn't like having to retire when you scored 25 runs and standing out in the field for 2.5 hours or 3 hours and getting the ball once. So cricket ended it pretty quickly, and then softball took over really. And probably from the age of 4 or 5 years old, I started softball, but probably when I was 7 or 8 really, when you used to travel into town to Bell Block and play Marylands and Namutu, and when softball was thriving really through those days of probably when the freezing works was around, and definitely Motunui coming about. So very fortunate enough and very lucky enough to play amongst the calibre that I did growing up through the years. So yeah,
awesome.
That's how it started for me.
Yeah, and back when it started for you when you were younger, what was softball like in Taranaki? Was it quite strong back then, and what was it about the game that you loved so much?
So obviously it was quite strong. So for us here in Waitara, we had Te Atiawa, Waipapa, Raukura, and then also Waitara. So we had 4 softball clubs within our community of Waitara, but also you'd go into town and there would be just as many people playing in Bell Block and also throughout New Plymouth and Taranaki really. So it was quite a big adventure. You never get to play teams more than twice because there were so many teams at your age group. So yeah, that's very pretty much where it took off. So you used to play at home when you had to play Waitara teams, or you travel to Bell Block or go to Namutu Domain there in Spotswood, or go up to Maryland's, up by the meeting of the waters, and play in those teams, really, in those little communities.
I remember it was when I was a little tech, it was quite a popular sport back then. There was a lot of people playing sport and softball in Taranaki. But obviously for you, things kicked on quite quickly. And in 1989, you won the junior world title with New Zealand. And then obviously you made your international debut with New Zealand in 1994 and went on to win 3 senior world championship titles and a Commonwealth Games gold medal. Tell us a little bit about that feeling of representing your nation and having the opportunity to win world titles and the likes.
It was quite interesting, really, for me, because obviously you touched on about the junior boys. Was fortunate enough to play with Jared, cousin Jared, in that team. So eventually I came back from that tour and winning that World Cup, and I sort of stopped playing and went to Scotland to play rugby. So I took up professional rugby. Through my school years, softball wasn't a number one sport for me. It was just a pastime, rugby. So I had 3 New Zealand secondary school trials, really, through my schooling years. So rugby was my love, always has been, really. So took up rugby, and then it wasn't until softball sort of kicked in, went to Scotland, played a year in Scotland in Ayr, and then I got a call to come back and play in Hutt Valley in Wellington. And then I retired from rugby, really, from there. And then softball sort of took over to be the number one priority for me. I didn't actually see it at that time. It was just an opportunity to go and play a bit more competitive ball, because obviously playing here in Taranaki, we got to a point, and if you stayed, you stayed. But if you wanted to move on, you had to move away, pretty much like everybody else. During the times when you get to a certain age group, probably around the 18 years old, you have to move away to chase that career and chase that carrot that's really out there. So headed down to Wellington and then retired from rugby, really, at the age of 19, I think I was. And then softball kicked in, went through, played represented stuff for Hutt Valley men's. And then, very lucky enough to debut in 1994 for New Zealand on a North American tour. Then 96, obviously made the World Cup team to go Midland, Michigan. And, it's to make it yourself, but also to make it with whānau was another thing too. So Jared and I both headed away in 1996 to Midland, Michigan, and won the World Cup in the men's, which was, we went through 14 games and won 14 games. Didn't lose any. I think we scored 99 or 100 runs in those 14 games and gave up 5. So in a team, when you're playing a caliber of that in the world tournament, is pretty special, actually, to be honest with you. And then between 97, 98, I snapped my peroneal tendon. I got named to captain New Zealand, and I had to turn it down because I had to go for operation. So during that time of 96 through to 2000, I was just in rehab and never made any New Zealand teams. And then the World Cup team to South Africa got named, and I just got back out of injury and done enough to make that team to head away to go to South Africa and East London. So once again, headed away there. We played 13 games, 14 games, won 12, lost 1, and won the final. So lost to Japan in a semi-final or quarter-final, and then fought our way back to win the final. And become back-to-back world champions again with Jared, but also we had Brad Rona, which was Jared's first cousin, Peter's son, Rona whānau. So it was quite, to have 3 from Taranaki in that team was outstanding. And then from 2000 to 2004, fortunate enough to continue to make New Zealand teams all the way through. And then 2004 was down in Christchurch. I snapped my tendon again, peroneal longus tendon, and I pulled out of that team, really. And then Don Tricker said, we went to the surgeon, and surgeon said, "Oh, it's still attached, but we're going to have to operate it sometime." And then, so when you play at a World Cup for softball, once you start it, you can't replace anybody. You have to continue on playing even if people get injured. So I knew the situation there for me. So I withdrew myself because play one game and snap my tendon completely. They couldn't replace me. I had to carry on with 15. So, but Don Tricker turned around and said, no, you need to stay in. I want you in. So they strapped me up and I carried on playing, and turned up with a three-peat, gold medal again at home. First time probably for my whānau to see me play at home in New Zealand and at a World Cup, because all the others have been away, which was, it was outstanding to have our friends and whānau in the stands to watch us turn up and play, which was pretty cool. Commonwealth Games 06, so obviously battled for injury, and went to Commonwealth Games and was used as a demonstration sport. So we went away and played in that, undefeated, and turned around with a gold medal, Commonwealth gold medal. And then on the completion of the final and in the changing rooms, I announced my retirement, and I finished there and then because my body was done. You know when your body gets to a point, but your brain wants to carry on. It was one of those things. And then obviously had the surgeon's voice in my ears, and he said, well, if you carry on playing at this top level, you'll be in a wheelchair when you're 50. And I was probably 14 years away from that happening. So at that time, I didn't want to see myself in a wheelchair. I still wanted to be upright and walking, not being anything against people in wheelchairs, but so.
Well, what a stellar career, man. Obviously been all over the world playing the game and representing your nation, winning world titles. Must be something pretty special to look back on and to, those memories, as you mentioned a number of times there about whānau, how important it was to have whānau present at those special occasions and special memories. Now, that was your playing career, but then you've kind of moved into a coaching kind of role as well. So you've done a lot of coaching in your time. Tell us a little bit more about your coaching space and what you're doing in that space.
Yeah, so it's sort of probably in 96 it started. I came back home, moved back after the World Cup, and coaching career sort of ticked off with Taranaki under 15. So Uncle Bull Murray was coaching them, and he got me to be assistant coach. So virtually that was my first stint into the coaching. Had the likes of Hazley and Dwayne Pine, and probably all the ones you grew up with, Caps, out and about. They were a great team, and they ended up winning the tournament, actually, which was quite good. So they kicked it off, and then I coached another group of under-19s through ISA softball, sort of kicked them off with their career as well. And then New Zealand A, I think it was about 2008, 2009. Might have been 2007, I think. I first took up the head coach role of New Zealand A team from there. And then I'd sort of taken a look at my career, and then I went into do my degree in teaching, and then got a call from Thomas Mākia, one of the greats of our game, to be part of his coaching staff in 2014, with the Junior Black Sox under 18s. So, and was with them from 2015-14 right through to 2023, where Jared and I took them to Mexico under 18. So and then obviously just returned with the New Zealand Black Sox as the battery coach from Canberra. So it's been involved. As you know, and what you're doing within our community, you're giving back and trying to install or encourage people that doesn't matter where you're from or where you come from, you're good enough to make these national teams. So you just want to give back.
100%, and it's awesome to see you giving back in that space with a game that you love so much and the knowledge that you have within the game. Now I understand you're building up for a World Cup in Canada next year, I think. How's the preparation going with that?
Yeah, so with my role with Softball New Zealand in high performance space, so they had to go away and qualify. So things have changed since when I played. It was teams was put out there, and you'd have between 18 teams that used to turn up to World Cup. So now they go through a qualifying series. So this year, and obviously the photo behind me, we had to go and qualify to the World Cup. So only top 8 teams go to the World Cup now. And they had 3 sections of 8 teams, of 6 teams, and so 18 in total. So you have to go and qualify. You have to finish in the top 2. So the Black Sox finished in the top 2. They finished second behind Argentina. Argentina beat them 5-4, I think, in the semi-final. And then they turned around and beat Canada 4-1. To give them the right to go and qualify for next year's in July. So they've got a lot of work to do. Yeah, and it's not easy because you're going up, you're virtually walking into quarterfinals, really. You haven't got nothing to turn up and warm up to get into it. You're hitting the ground running with the top 8 teams in the world going for it for 7 days.
That's that's a big bit of mahi there on the horizon to get the boys over there and to do well. I'm sure Canada will be an awesome trip. So if there was any bit of advice you could give out to some aspiring young softballers or athletes in general, based on your journey and your learnings, what would that be?
When I look back, people talk about high performance, and we live in a high performance environment day in, day out. So you take your household, your household is a high performance sort of arena, to be honest with you. So everybody's got their roles and responsibilities in these routines that happen. And then what we try to do is we just try to polish those routines. So for anybody that's aspiring to get to the top, it's about understanding your role within your team. Just like your whānau, everyone gets up at a certain time and everyone's got a role to do to get out of the door at a certain time in the morning, whether it's 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, that everyone rolls out. And if someone doesn't do their role, then obviously things will take a turn and there's consequences with it. So it's about just getting into routines and into very good habits. And then what you're trying to do is keep it simple, but you need to polish those good things that you got. Because if you don't polish those good things that you got, it's going to be very difficult for you. So, and understand, as Charlie McAllister referred to me, that was Charlie Boy. He said, professionalism is about being a piece of meat. The best piece of meat everyone wants and everyone will buy. It doesn't matter what sort of cut it is, whether it's eye fillet or what it is, everyone will want it. But as soon as that meat goes off and you get injured, they'll throw it to the dogs. So there was a bit of advice that was given to me as I was coming through. Charlie Boy said that to me after he'd come back from Oldham through league. He goes, "You're just a piece of meat. Understand how you're going to turn out with that meat. Once you get injured, that meat goes off and then they'll throw it to the dogs and then the people at the bottom tier will pick it up." But yeah, it's about habits and understanding what you're good at and polishing those things, to be honest, and keeping it simple. Don't add too much to it. Just polishing what you've already got.
Nice. Those are awesome. Some wise words there, whānau, for all our listeners at home. Make sure you know your role within your whānau and within your sporting space. But hey, Bev, thank you for sharing your time, your story, and your amazing sporting journey with us on the show. To know we have someone with your experience right here in Taranaki is an absolute blessing. So thank you so much for all you've done and continue to do for the game of softball. And we look forward to seeing the progress into the future under the guidance and tutelage of people like yourself, and all the best over in Canada. And we look forward to checking in again once you get back with a world title.
Kia ora, Caps. No worries. Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi.